Ever since Megamind versus the Doom Syndicate came out, one of the most popular arguments made against the movie is how simply the conflict could have been resolved if Megamind had just used the dehydration gun on his enemies. And that is a pretty solid argument, since that's not only his go-to solution for every problem he has in the original movie, but he even uses it a few times to get rid of people in the same much-hated sequel. But at the same time, bringing that up does lead to an interesting question regarding the original. Why didn't he just use the dehydration gun on Titan? What was stopping him from attempting to use it on him once he got out of control? And there are a few theories that can be put forward that could explain why he wouldn't try it on Titan when he had every reason to with the Doom Syndicate. And today, I'd like to go over these theories to the best of my ability to see if a definitive reason can be found for his reluctance to use the gun on Titan, as well as why it makes more sense that he wouldn't than it does in the sequel. And as I'm always obligated to say, there will be major spoilers ahead for both Megamind and Megamind versus the Doom Syndicate, as well as some minor ones for Megamind rules, so in case you don't want to know something, you might want to come back to this video another day. You have been warned. Okay. So the first thing that must be pointed out in regards to Titan is that he gets all of his powers directly from Metro Man, as obviously the only reason he has superpowers is because he was infused with his DNA. So therefore, whatever applies to Titan also applies to Metro Man himself. And this is important because Megamind had been battling Metro Man for years, and therefore had a ton of experience with the man's powers and knows what he's capable of. And this alone can easily explain why Megamind didn't even attempt to use the gun on Hal, because he probably tried to use it on Metro Man at some point, and for some reason it didn't work. And what only lends more credibility to this is that we see the dehydration gun was one of Megamind's first inventions. And considering how much of a go-to solution it really is for him, it's basically a given that he would have tried to use it on him and simply failed. Now, why it didn't work is up for debate, though once again, a few ideas can be put forth. Now, one of the most prevalent arguments as to why the dehydration gun wouldn't work on Metro Man or Titan is because of their super speed. And that isn't a bad one either, since we see just how fast Metro Man can escape from any kind of danger he's in when using it. However, the one problem with that idea is that it's debatable how aware Megamind was of that ability. Because if he had known he could move that fast, one would think he would take that more into account when making weapons to defeat him. And one also has to keep in mind that Megamind is the one who trained Hal, and he's never shown going anywhere near as fast as Metro Man does when he fakes his death. And one would think that if he knew he could move that fast, the best time for him to use it would have been right before Megamind takes his powers away. Because if that had been Metro Man, he would have had more than enough time to be able to get out of the way with his super speed. So that, combined with Megamind's questionable knowledge on Metro Man's super speed in the first place, leads one to question if Hal even knew he had that ability. But that being said, just because he doesn't move as fast as Metro Man doesn't mean that he isn't pretty fast on his own. After all, he's able to drop Roxanne and then fly fast enough to catch her before she hits the ground, as well as take off so fast that he breaks all the windows on the building he's standing on one time and cause a sonic boom another. So either way, it isn't out of the realm of possibility that speed was a major factor in why Megamind doesn't try to use the dehydration gun on him. Because even if he didn't know he could move that fast, he still did know that he could move fast enough to potentially get out of the way before it hit him. But once again, considering just how desperate things become and he still never considers using it, it's likely there was more to it than just speed alone. And one of the more interesting obstacles to potentially consider is actually Metro Man's heat vision, which Titan obviously more than knew how to use. Because it may be impossible to know for sure, but if the beam from their laser eyes came into contact with the beam of the dehydration gun, it's very likely that the effect could have been similar to when Lucy uses a flamethrower to protect herself from Gru's freeze ray in Despicable Me 2. That being, the two would basically cancel each other out and therefore protect Metro Man or Titan from the effects of the gun. And if that was indeed the case, that would better explain Megamind's reluctance to try and use it on Hal, since that would only invite Hal to blast at him with his heat vision while also leaving him extremely vulnerable to attack. But as I already brought up, the only thing that keeps this argument from being more credible is that we don't actually know how the dehydration gun and heat vision would interact, so all of this is simply speculation. Though I do still believe that it's extremely unlikely that their heat vision wouldn't be able to hold the beam back to at least some extent. But there is also one other idea to be considered, which is that Metro Man was simply immune to the gun entirely. And while at first that probably doesn't sound likely, one has to consider that Metro Man was meant to basically be a parody of Superman, with one of his most notable qualities being that his superpowers can make him great at almost anything, and even has advantages that Superman himself doesn't. He even says his eyes can see through lead, which is something Superman can't do. So the point is that he basically has no weaknesses, and only gives up fighting out of boredom, while Megamind is able to defeat Hal simply through experience and also being a lot smarter than him. So with all of that to be considered, it is actually more than likely than some might think that Metro Man's powers could have protected him from the effects of the dehydration gun. As in, even if he was shot by it point blank, nothing would happen to him, and maybe even bounce off of him like it would a mirror. And if that is indeed the case, then that would definitely explain why Megamind never even considers using it on Titan, because he already knows it wouldn't work. Now I know some might counter that last argument by pointing out that if Metro Man was immune to the dehydration gun and Megamind knew it, then it could be just as likely that he knew it wouldn't work on the Doom Syndicate. But the thing is, one has to keep in mind that if that last theory is correct, Megamind has every reason in the world to know that it wouldn't work on Metro Man long before the events of the movie. As I noted at the start, the dehydration gun was one of his first inventions and his go-to solution for everything. So one of the first things he would have done was try using it on Metro Man. And when that didn't work, he would move on to something else and so forth. But in the continuity of Megamind versus the Doom Syndicate, when he was a former member of the team, he has no reason to believe that it wouldn't work on them. Because Metro Man had been his sworn enemy all his life, of course he would try using his signature weapon on him. Even if the audience doesn't see it, they can easily infer it. But why would he ever use it on his own allies? I mean, he uses it on Minion at the beginning, but one has to keep in mind that he was both a child, and that stuff like that is basically Minion's job. So it makes sense that he would use it on him specifically. But once again, he would have no reason to use it on his own partners in crime. That would be like him using the dehydration gun on Roxanne. He has absolutely no reason to. The point here is, regardless of anything else, Megamind at least has a precedence for not using the gun on Titan. Because as I just noted, Megamind had been fighting Metro Man all his life. So the audience will accept that if he doesn't try something on him or Titan, then it's because he already knows it won't work. The audience is smart enough to infer that through the information available, and the movie doesn't have to spell this out. But once again, it's a totally different story with the Doom Syndicate because he had no reason to ever use the dehydration gun on them before, and therefore would have no reason to believe it wouldn't work. If there was some experience where he tried and failed, it would have to be stated. I mean, if you really want to reach, one could argue that if the heat vision theory is correct, then the gun probably wouldn't work on Behemoth since he's mostly made of lava, but instead of hitting him with the gun, Megamind could just spray him down with a hose, and that still would be no reason to not use it on the other three. And, of course, that's ignoring if what happens in the simulation is indeed accurate to what would really happen. But no matter the reason why Megamind wouldn't use the dehydration gun on Hal, he had no reason not to use it on the Doom Syndicate. And those who pointed that out were right to call the writers out on it. But that still doesn't mean it isn't interesting to speculate why he wouldn't even attempt to use it on Titan, considering he's shown multiple times in the movie to turn to it as an easy way to solve any problem. And as I noted before, because of that, his behavior regarding Titan only reinforces the idea that due to some experience with Metro Man, he knew the gun would not work on him. But what that reason was, it seems we'll never know for certain, even if the theories I put forth hopefully present some of the more likely possibilities. Alright, I think I've gone on about this for long enough. So now I'd like to hear what you guys think. Why do you think Megamind didn't try using the dehydration gun on Titan? And does it tie into any of the suggestions I made, or do you think it was for a completely different reason? Whatever you believe, please let me know in the comments below. But let me just stress that you don't have to agree with anything I said in this video if you don't want to. You are entitled to your own opinion and can feel about this or any other topic we discuss here that you want to. And thank you all for watching. I greatly appreciate it. And I hope to see you all next time.